That's not, UNDP is not well positioned, I think, to address this. I don't know really maybe if the UN can't, but you certainly can't pretend it's not happening. And the kind of things that are happening, according to the people that I met there and have been in contact with before and after, are like Tamil store owners in Colombo being approached by, I don't know if mob is the right word, groups of Sinhalese nationalists and told, give up the money, your side lost. See what I mean? Which to me is very like, I don't want to say it's Rwanda-like in the sense I don't want to compare the numbers. The numbers, no matter, even if it's 20,000 or 30,000, it doesn't compare. But the mood of sort of a majority saying like, it's our time to wipe you out, it's there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the immediate sort of concern, I think for the international community has to be letting, internationalizing these IDP camps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, or at least demilitarizing them. And letting, say, the ICRC and large numbers of international humanitarian groups into these camps, because which, by all accounts are pretty appalling places. I mean, you saw it yourself.
No, they are. There are people, especially the newer parts. I mean, this is a sort of a terrible, we visited, there was one camp that's been set up there longer, so the structures were a little bit larger, but the level of fear, like the people, literally, we were speaking to these people, and then suddenly the soldiers come over and everyone has to run away. We go to another place where people are basically just sleeping in kind of open tents with like nothing inside, even blankets. Basically, there's just it's just a UHCR's tent, and you get inside it.
Yeah.
This is next to a guy said speak to my wife, look at her leg, big hole in her leg, and they were very clear. This is caused by a government artillery shell, and there's no medical care. Then they drove us further away in the camp where there was medical care. There was sort of an open air hospital in what looks like it's like almost the way you do a hockey rink. It's just sort of a roof over open air space. Everyone's on the ground, like there's no beds or even like raised up. And in a way, I don't want to, again, this is the least of it, but so Ban Ki-moon and us, the media of 20 people, go bumbling in there, and there's no room for us. But it's like a photo op with mostly old people that are near the point of death. Mm-hmm. And a cameraman is jostled backwards and steps on a lady. And she howls as, and then, as the group, we're just moving on. But they say, come on, the helicopters are rolling,
Yeah.
So it's, the larger point was just sort of, this was a problem. In one of the camps, they had Tamil children lined up along both sides of a pathway, holding, the Sri Lankan flag, which I don't want to say that this offends them, but this is not the flag that they've been holding the rest of their life.
I mean, this is
it's very much
propaganda.
The analogy to me would be if Serbia retook Kosovo, just hypothetically, and then had Kosovar kids waving the Serbian flag and invited the SG. It's purely propaganda. And they had the kids sing. The kids sang a song that went, Ban Ki-moon, and you have Ban Ki-moon there in a blue baseball hat, smiling as if it's like you've arrived in Hawaii at the airport and you're putting a lei around you. So this is very troubling.
So I mean the bottom line is this is a situation that demands international attention, and the UN's top human rights official, Navi Pillay, earlier in the week called for a international commission of inquiry to investigate alleged human rights abuses committed by both sides during sort of the end game of this civil war. Germany and a group of European countries picked up her call and took the case to the UN Human Rights Council. Mm-hmm. And after 2 days of deliberation, the council was unable to approve Navi Pillay's call for a commission of inquiry. Well, so this I wrote about this extensively on UN Dispatch, but this is a pretty disappointing pretty disappointing turn of events, both for the people in Sri Lanka, but also for, frankly, the Human Rights Council as an entity that should be capable of probing situations like Sri Lanka. I mean, if there's ever a situation crying out for this kind of international investigation, international inquiry, it is Sri Lanka. But the Human Rights Council, because of opposition by mostly the developing world, backed by China and Russia, could not agree to send a investigator.
It's even worse. They actually passed, and again, one can criticize the strategy of the Westerners, because they said, we're going to have a meeting, we're going to look for an outcome of an investigation, and thereupon, almost immediately, Sri Lanka tabled a resolution before they did. And the resolution that they tabled that largely passed, that with very few changes, ended up being passed by 29 to 12. with 6 abstentions, congratulates the government for its victory, and calls on the international community to give them money for it.
Yeah.
So it's worse. It wasn't like an up or down vote of should we investigate them. It was like Sri Lanka grabbed the bull by the horns and said no. And again, I don't think I've done this in our course of our discussions of this, but I mean Sri Lanka's argument, which is not, it has some like intellectually some traction. They said, hey, the U.S. and the U.K. they're bombing Afghanistan. They're killing civilians in the name of getting Al Qaeda. Why can't we? Mm-hmm. So there's a point that they make, but when you really look at how they conducted it, and I saw, there have been, the only yesterday evening I spoke with the Sri Lankan ambassador, who's a very savvy guy, and said, I'm glad you went, and you should. Yeah. He said you should go again, but I would just want to say for the record that I asked for a visa extension. Like I didn't want to just go there for 24 hours. I thought I'd stay. Totally denied. So, but at the same time we got in, and we did. He said, and I have to give them credit for it. I think the reason, just to go back to sort of the facts there, is after these camps, they took the whole group, including Ban Ki-moon, on a military overfly of the conflict zone. We were probably 60 feet off the ground, maybe a little bit higher, and it was very troubling. In fact, I'm not sure if this is not what Dan was referring to, because it was a scene
it was what he was referring to when he
carnage. This was, even though it was empty, it was eerie, because you just saw, it was like people had just you saw just like virtually every palm tree, let's put it this way, is burned like a matchstick. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the place was napalmed, except that you still have some tents lying around, but it's clearly just like the scene of just untold horrors, So the question is, why did the government show us this? In part, some people said they showed it so that the UN could stop saying, or people would stop saying that there were still people in the conflict zone, because they never did grant access to the Red Cross, ever. Mm-hmm. In the final 10 days, every day the Red Cross would park off, probably not even visible from the shore because they'd get bombed by the Sri Lankans, but they were there ready to take out the wounded and deliver food, and they were never allowed in. And so I think there grew up this sense, and I think it's probably true that after the conflict, even after the victory speech, there were still wounded people dying in the conflict zone. Mm-hmm. Now the real cautionary people are saying, there's mass graves and they've cleaned it up. But so I think a week after it all ended, they said we can fly you over. But in part, one of the Sri Lankan officials made this argument to us that you see how the LTT had them living, i.e., pointing at these like tents that the government